Do you think women love rich men? Not necessarily. She can sit next to a man driving a Bentley and still feel lonely. But she can also blush because of the calm gaze of a man who owns nothing but inner strength. The issue isn't your assets, it's the energy you bring. Your presence, the way you control your emotions, not her. The way you make her feel safe without saying a word. And that's why she feels drawn to you. Not because of what you have, but because of who you are. 1. Women don't really need rich men. They need a man with presence and distinct energy. In the quiet suburbs of Scottsdale, Arizona, Marcus, 35, doesn't have anything you'd call impressive by society's standards. He doesn't drive a luxury car, doesn't live in a mansion, doesn't wear expensive suits or flashy watches. He's a fitness trainer at a local gym, simple, composed and full of vitality. But what makes people notice Marcus isn't what he owns, but the silent presence he brings with him every time he walks into a room. He doesn't need to talk much. He doesn't try to impress, doesn't tell stories to show off. Yet he remembers every name, every past conversation. He doesn't scroll his phone while speaking. He looks people in the eyes. And when he does, he is truly present. That's something many men think is simple but fail to do. Not because they can't, but because they're too busy trying to prove something. Women aren't drawn to Marcus because he has, but because he is. They feel something safe and steady in him, without him needing to make promises or open his wallet. What they sense is energy, a subtle yet deep connection, a kind of presence that makes them feel seen, understood, and heard. Marcus doesn't try to be magnetic, and that's exactly why he is. In a world where everyone fights to be noticed, the man who doesn't need attention becomes truly different. He walks slowly, speaks gently, and smiles with a quiet sincerity. It's not a technique, it's his nature, not performance, but authenticity. Because in the end, women don't long for a man who has everything. They long for a man who, simply by standing beside them, makes them feel enough. And that feeling cannot be bought. It only comes from a man who has truly met himself. 2. A man's strength doesn't lie in money, but in emotional control and staying grounded. Amid the busy streets of downtown Chicago, where every block holds untold stories, Daniel, 42, lives a life that seems quiet on the surface. As a successful financial advisor, he understands numbers, risks, and high-stakes decisions. But there's one thing that took him longer to learn than any degree: how to stay emotionally grounded when in love. He once dated a woman who was beautiful, intelligent, and sharp. She kept testing him through silence, through arguments, through emotional games that many men might mistake for relationship dynamics. At first, Daniel responded like most, explaining, comforting, trying to win the argument, thinking that's how he proved he cared. But the more he tried, the deeper he got pulled into a tangled cycle with no way out. Until one night, when she screamed at him in the living room, hoping once again he'd react strongly. Daniel simply looked at her. His gaze held no judgment, no anger, just clarity. He said, "If you need to scream to feel loved by me, then you're not seeking love. You're seeking pain to remind yourself that you still matter." Then he walked out. No door slammed, no follow-up text. He chose peace over drama. And in that moment, silent, defenseless, she finally had nothing more to say. Daniel didn't win the argument. He won by not playing. He didn't need to be right, because he was grounded enough not to be shaken. Women may test you in 100 ways, but what they truly want to know is, when emotions rise, will you still remain yourself? A mature man doesn't try to control others, he masters himself. And that self-mastery creates a deeper kind of attraction, not from muscle or money, but from the sense that, with him, nothing will fall apart. 3. A woman's sexual desire is deeply tied to uncertainty and mystery. At an art exhibition by the beach in San Diego, warm golden lights spilled across abstract frames as Claire, a marketing professional, happened to stand next to a man with quiet eyes and a smile that passed like a breeze. His name was Tyler, a freelance photographer who lived slowly, seeing life as if every moment were an unshot photograph. They talked, laughed gently, discussed light, structure, and things that couldn't quite be named. But when the evening ended, Tyler didn't ask for her number, didn't promise to see her again. He simply smiled and said, "If we meet again, it'll be fate." 3 days later, Claire was the one who reached out. Not because Tyler did anything especially dramatic, but because he didn't do anything hastily. That uncertainty didn't annoy her, it intrigued her. In a world where people rush to possess, Tyler left a space, and in that space, her imagination wandered freely, painting questions with no answers. They began dating, but Tyler still didn't text every hour, didn't update his feelings, didn't try to pour out his life like a living resume. He let her discover him, piece by piece, like unfolding a book without a table of contents. Claire once confessed, "There's something about you I still don't fully understand, and that's exactly what pulls me in." Women aren't attracted to everything you tell them, but to the things you choose not to. Mystery isn't a game, it's the art of keeping your deepest layers for the one who earns them. When a man doesn't reveal everything, doesn't demand to be instantly understood, doesn't try to define himself right away, he rises above, not in status, but in emotional depth. And no matter how strong a woman is, she'll always be drawn to what she can't fully grasp. Not because she's weak, but because she knows anything fully owned too soon loses all reason to be desired. 4. A man's silent and attentive presence creates a special kind of attraction. On a quiet street corner in Portland, Oregon, there's an old coffee shop with large windows facing the road, where soft jazz flows through the air with the scent of roasted beans and morning light. Evan, an interior designer, always chose the small table by the window, where he read books, observed life, and stayed silent. He didn't bring a laptop, didn't wear headphones, didn't tap away at frantic messages like most of the regulars. He was simply present. Evan never initiated small talk, but when someone spoke to him, especially a woman, he listened more with his eyes than his ears. No empty nodding, no glancing around while she spoke, just a kind of deep attention that made people forget to feel nervous. One day, during a small design workshop, Julia, new to the city, asked Evan a simple question about using interior lighting. He just replied, "Lighting shouldn't make the room stand out. It should make the people inside feel seen." That short sentence, full of meaning, left Julia silent. Not because it was overly profound, but because it came from a place that was so quiet, so real. She began returning to the cafe every Sunday morning, not for the coffee, but for Evan's calm and grounded presence. A man's allure doesn't always lie in what he says. Sometimes it's in how he listens, how he shows up, and how he doesn't need the spotlight. When a man isn't distracted by the outside world, he becomes a grounding force in a world too full of noise. Women don't just want to be heard, they want to feel seen. And a man may be silent, but if his eyes aren't absent, he's the one she'll remember. No compliments, no promises, just a quiet space where she can be fully herself. And for a real woman, that's worth more than flowers or sweet words. 5. A man's appeal doesn't lie in his possessions, but in his maturity and clarity. In the suburbs of Dallas, Texas, where wide roads wind through neatly trimmed lawns, Grant lives in a small wooden house simple yet sturdy, much like the man himself. At 46, a seasoned construction engineer, he was once the symbol of success in the eyes of his peers. Sports cars, luxury watches, lavish getaways to Miami with his youthful girlfriend. But what he never found through all those years was peace. After his divorce at 39, Grant no longer cared for the things that once made him stand out. He sold his car, closed his social media, and returned to what was essential, a life that needed no display. He woke early, drank coffee in silence, fixed the fence when needed, and when not needed, left things just as they were. He didn't try to be interesting anymore because he already felt his life was worth living. One day, while repairing his wooden gate, Riley, a woman new to the neighborhood, came to borrow some tools. She was drawn to him almost instantly, not by looks or voice, but by the way Grant looked at her, steady, calm, and without the slightest hesitation. He simply said, "Go ahead and use it, just leave it on the porch when you're done." No small talk, no polite overreaching, no offer of tea or idle flirting. But it was that decisiveness without coldness, that clarity without rush, that made Riley stay longer than she expected. Because men like Grant don't try to appear interesting, they just are. And that's become rare in a world built on masks. Women don't necessarily look for a man who has everything. They look for someone who doesn't have to trade himself away to keep anything. A man who can say no without fearing rejection. A man who doesn't need validation to feel whole. The greatest kind of attraction doesn't come from your bank balance. It comes from this. Are you like an oak tree in the storm, or a reed that bends to every compliment? And the man who doesn't need to be noticed, doesn't retell his glory, doesn't need to prove anything anymore. He becomes the safest place a woman can find in a world full of noise. Conclusion: the kind of wealth women truly seek. In today's world, where social media is flooded with displays of luxury and curated lifestyles, many assume women are attracted to money, status, or flashy things. But the truth is simpler and far deeper. Women don't need a man who is wealthy. They need a man who is rich in inner strength. Not luxury cars, but steadiness of mind. Not flowery words, but an eye that's truly present. They're drawn to a man who knows who he is, doesn't get swept up in fleeting emotions, and doesn't need a crowd to validate his worth. You don't have to shout, "Love me." You only need to show up in silence, carrying the quiet confidence of someone who already knows his value. Because in the end, what's most attractive is not what you give, but the energy you bring when you walk into the room. Stop trying to be attractive. Start being real. Because the truth always has its own gravity. If this video made you pause and reflect, that's exactly why it was created. Share your thoughts, because what you say might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. If you found value in these small things, don't forget to like. And if you want to keep growing into a deeper kind of strength, not of muscle, but of presence, hit subscribe. Comment below. What makes a man truly attractive in your eyes? I read every word, and so do many others.